Jake Anderson here, and today we're going to talk about Praxis core writing skills. Now, there's a plethora of different things that we could talk about, but I've narrowed it down based on some examples I've seen recurring a lot in my tutoring sessions. So let's get right into it. The first thing that we're going to talk about is revision and context. Revision and context, basically exactly what it sounds like. You're revising things, but more based on the context, what's around what you're revising, rather than so much as like a simple editing, like a typographical error or anything like that. It's more about what does this sentence mean compared to the other paragraphs that's around? What does the paragraph mean to the larger what you're reading? It's usually going to be more based on sentence stuff, like how does sentence 15 fit between sentence 16 and 17? What does it do to the context of that information? Basically. But to get more in-depth, revision and context, it's going to ask you questions to ask you to edit or revise a passage to make it better. It's usually going to be something that's clumsy or incorrect. Your job is going to be to make the choice that basically best improves the sentences and improves the overall text. Like how does the better version of this sentence improve the whole passage? Now, improving the passage, it may require a change in word choice, style, tone, grammar, or organization. Organization is a big one. That's going to change everything. We'll get more into that as we go. For some of them, though, there'll be no revision necessary, and those are going to be the tricky ones, because especially if you've gone to my tutoring sessions, because it feels like we're just going over what's wrong, and then when there's one that's not wrong, you're like, oh, but there's got to be, right? But if it feels right, we always say go with your gut. Now here's a general strategy for the revision and context section. Now I know some of you English majors out there don't like these formulaic approaches to things, but when it comes to the test, you just do the formulaic approach. Like, you're usually not tested on your creativity or how cool you can write. It's more about following the formula. 9 times out of 10, if you're being tested, just follow the formula. So here's a good formulaic strategy. Step 1, read the passage actively. As you read, keep asking yourself questions for your understanding. You can ask yourself any of the questions as you're reading, but some of the good ones are like, what's the point of this? Well, you won't be tested on the information necessarily. You will on the reading portion, but in the writing, more about how you would convey the information. But you do want to know the point of the passage because that'll help you know what's a better way to convey that. If you conflict your ideas too much, then it won't be properly conveyed, and then that reflects poorly on your writing. What does each paragraph do? How does this paragraph assist the paragraph before it? How does it bridge the 2 paragraphs together? That type of thing. And what's out of place? Like, is there anything that shouldn't be there? There's such things as vague pronouns, sudden verb shifts, any abrupt change in topic. All of those things, if they just kind of strike your eye like, whoa, that was not there before, then chances are it's not supposed to be there now. Whenever you're editing for revision, or at least on this test, then those are the things that you're going to want to look at. If they catch your eye, that might be because they're a bad thing. Again, follow your intuition. Now, step 2, just answer the questions. Yeah, I know, it sounds too easy. It is. Just answer the question. So, work from the beginning to the end, and then choose basically the best conclusion. Whenever choosing the best conclusion, it's best to have the rest of the passage well-focused and error-free. So a lot of the times they're going to give you a bunch of passages with a bunch of errors, and if you're noticing them already as you're going along, just make mental notes of them, and then you can come back to them later and be like, I knew something was weird about that. Also, make a prediction. So when it comes to the actual content of what you're reading, and you don't know the conclusion, try to make a conclusion, make a guess. Because if you're wrong, whenever you get there, you'll make a better note of it in your head, like, oh, that's not what I thought was going to be the conclusion. Haha. You learn better by being corrected sometimes. Also, use the process of elimination. I don't know how many times that has assisted us, and also that's how I usually test. I usually just cross off what I know is wrong first, and then use my best judgment on what's left. Think of it this way: if you get down to only two answers left, then you already have a 50-50 shot of getting it right. So start by eliminating what you know is wrong, and then go with your best judgment on the last one or two or however many. What type of questions will I see in the revision and context passage? Well, isn't that what we want to know? Yeah, so there's going to be a bunch of different ones, kind of a larger portion. There's not going to be a bunch of each of these sections, but there's going to be one or two maybe of each of these types in the revision and context passage, which is one is where you revise a sentence, you just fix grammar or style errors, like that's the most basic revision you can think of. Precision and concision, basically you order the sentences in the passage in the clearest and most logical way, so those are the ones where you move sentences around a lot. Transitions, where you pick the most logical way to connect the sentence to the sentences around it. Fairly self-explanatory. Combining sentences, so like two sentences that are slightly different ideas but can be basically presented together. Here's how you would connect them. Insert and delete sentences, where you add or remove information based on the relevance to the focus of the passage as a whole. And then recognize conclusions. So recognize when a sentence contains no grammatical or style errors. See, you're on that point. Basically, some of these are realizing that, oh, there actually is nothing wrong with that. Now I'm going to go more in depth in some of these that need a little bit more. Some of these that it isn't as necessary to go in depth, but I'm trying to focus here on what is the most helpful. So revise a sentence. I'm just going to show you some examples here. This is a basic though. I don't need to spend too much time, but I like example number 3. After finally getting off the trail, the morning felt more exciting. That's the incorrect version. The correct version is, after finally setting off on the trail, comma, he felt the morning was more exciting. I like this example because it gets into more of that clarity and conciseness, which we're about to get into more so. But after finally setting off on the trail, the morning doesn't feel more exciting because the morning doesn't have feel. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but once we start getting into the clarity and conciseness, you'll understand why that's more important. You want to clarify that he, the guy whoever set off on that trail, he was the one who felt the morning was more exciting because the morning doesn't have feeling. And then the other two are pretty much just basic comma errors. They're not as necessary to go into. Now, the precision and concision portion. Basically, this is just when things get wordy, when things get crazy, things get less concise, and your ideas get a little confused. That's why it's best to be neat, nice, and concise. Whenever it comes to, at least testing. If you want to get crazy in your own writing, make things a bit confusing, that's okay too. Sometimes I encourage that. But as far as test goes, you want to play everything safe, do everything formulaic, and make sure things are well pointed out. You can do this by replacing abstract nouns with verbs. You can. It's better to prefer short words to long words and phrases, unless there was no better words than those long words. A big thing I've noticed in people's writing is they try to sound smart by using special words. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't think I've used any million-dollar words in this whole presentation I'm presenting here. Communication is not usually about impressing people. It can be, but definitely not when you're testing. They're not going to test you on your vocabulary because it's not a vocabulary test. They're going to test you on your ability to communicate, basically. So think about that while you're testing. Try to make everything as clear and concise as you can. Avoid cliches. Cliches are those expressions you've probably heard 100 times. Stupid is as stupid does. Those are all great and cute, adorable, and fun. But what do they really mean? The fact that you can quote something that your, lovable grandfather said all the time does not really show that you can write or convey a clear message to someone or something, and you're not going to be tested on cliches. So save them for your own writing, save them for your casual speech, save them for anywhere but the practice writing portion. And then we'll all be doing good. Also avoid clever constructions. So like redundancies, repetitions, there is slash are slash in and it is constructions. Uh, I know sometimes people want to hit that word count, so they spread all the words out. Sometimes that can confuse things. So if you want to be more concise, which you usually do, don't. Sometimes you might need to, but sometimes you don't. Repetitions are definitely unnecessary. What's the point in wasting your word count with the words that you've already used? On the test, you're not going to be graded on your word count. I know some people just getting out of high school might have had some bad teachers in high school that did just look at their word count and didn't really consider what they're saying and how they're saying it. That's not how this test is going to work. So use your words wisely. Use accurate wording. This requires more words instead of fewer sometimes. But don't overdo it by trying to use special words that you don't have. Yeah, basically that. Next is transitions. Transitions are words that can be used within a single sentence, between two different sentences, or even between paragraphs. See how the writing below can be improved by adding transition words in each of these situations. So an example is Susan spoke, thinking of the right answer. Now with the transition, that sentence goes, Susan spoke only after thinking of the right answer, which is more, it's a clearer transition because now you know that Susan uh, spoke only after thinking of the right answer. In this case, the transition words are used to connect two parts of a single sentence, and the transition highlights chronology or the order in which the events occurred. So the fact that it said only after thinking of the right answer makes that the more preferred version rather than Susan spoke thinking of the right answer. It's, she could have thought of the right answer, but if she was doing something else, the right answer might not have been right. I don't know. And then another one is Michael didn't have enough money to buy his mom flowers. He wasn't old enough to get a job. He felt sad on Mother's Day. That just sounds like a lot going on there. So let's see it with a transition. Michael didn't have enough money to buy his mom flowers because he wasn't old enough to get a job. Nevertheless, he felt sad on Mother's Day. Now, I see how the original seems like it's just kind of throwing ideas out there. Michael didn't have enough money to buy his mom flowers. He wasn't old enough to get a job. He felt sad on Mother's Day. All of those are very personal things that we've just learned about Michael and his tragic life. But since they're all like not separate or they're not connected, it seems like these are separate ideas, and it kind of feels like you're throwing a lot at me at once. But now that you've added the transitions, Michael didn't have enough money to buy his mom flowers because he wasn't old enough to get a job. Nevertheless, he felt sad on Mother's Day. See how that kind of ties it all together, and it's one, well, it's two sentences, but one quick, simple idea, basically. I like that better. When transitions are used between paragraphs, they're often in the form of a phrase or a clause that refers to the previous information while introducing a new idea. These transitions often come at the beginning of new paragraphs and may use phrases like these. In addition to point A, point B is also important. In conclusion, the thesis is clear. It follows logically that the answer results from the points made earlier in this paper. Basically, some of these are good conclusion examples. That's when you can tell when something's being wrapped up if it has something like this. Like in conclusion, the thesis is clear. It follows logically that blah 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 blah. Now we're going to talk about combining sentences. How do you make two sentences that are two slightly separate ideas into one sentence? Well, we're going to find out. In each example, the base clause sentence appears first. Any sentences to be combined or embedded with the base clause appear below that base clause. For example, the base clause is the dog ran after the bus. The sentence to be embedded is the dog is yellow. Basically, main sentence is the dog ran after the bus, but we want to add the sentence the dog is yellow. So how do we make that sentence about the dog being yellow connect to the sentence about the dog running after the bus? Well, you would just say the yellow dog ran after the bus. See how these are two separate ideas that didn't really need to be separated? Similar to the one from a few minutes ago. Sometimes it's best to just throw all these details and get one simple, quick idea. Another example is the car stalled. And then the other sentence is the car ran out of gas. Well, to connect those, you could say that the car stalled because it ran out of gas. Now, if you didn't connect that with the because, then we could assume that these are two separate situations. Like it might not have stalled because it ran out of gas, but were a coincidence. And now you're thinking about coincidences, and your attention's really lost because it's not one, quick coherent idea. Do you see what I'm saying? Oh, so beautiful. Now we're going to talk about logical comparisons. Logical comparisons, I think, are one of my favorite things to talk about lately, just because they're kind of funny to me. Like it's basically something that you don't really think so much about until you actually have to think about it. You'll understand more once we look at them. Let's see. The logical comparison is a distinct comparison between specific aspects of two unlike things. And that still seems very confusing and more unsure. So let's look at some examples here. Consider the following sentence. You have higher odds of being injured by a vending machine than a cat. Now there's two things that this sentence could mean. It could mean that you're more likely to be injured by a vending machine than by a cat, or it could mean that you are more likely than a cat to be injured by a vending machine. Now, isn't it crazy how that one sentence could be taken two completely different ways? This is why you have to be very concise. Now, looking back at the sentence, I honestly can't remember which one it was supposed to be. I think the second one was the proper. Like, you are more likely than a cat is to be injured by a vending machine. Because cats usually, they can't get in, they can't push the door open. Let's look at another. Oh no, this further breaks that down. The first meaning, repeat the word by. For example, you have higher odds of being injured by a vending machine than by a cat. So basically, to solve these problems, you want to use these very specific words like that. And it's okay to repeat the words like that. So if you want the meaning to mean you're more likely to be injured by a vending machine than you would be by a cat, then you have to say it either just like I did or just add the by there plus. You have higher odds of being injured by a vending machine than by a cat. Now, the second meaning is you include a verb for the cat and move the cat earlier in the sentence to emphasize the comparison with you. So you would say you have higher odds than a cat does of being injured by a vending machine. Now that I'm looking at it, I think the first meaning was the proper one that they wanted there. But the main point that you should take away from all of this is that it was actually that confusing the first time, considering that it didn't specify. It's really important to specify when you're taking the test. Now let's try another one. Camille Pissarro. Sorry. Camille Pissarro painted more cityscapes than Impressionist painters, and thus made the most sustained contribution to urban view painting of any great artist since Canaletto. This underline is incorrect because as it stands, it states that Camille Pissarro painted cityscapes more than he painted other Impressionist painters. Now, it's not often that painters paint other painters. Sometimes they do, but we can assume that what they meant was the second version here. To correct this sentence, you would need to change it to Camille Pissarro painted more cityscapes than other Impressionist painters did. That's what we assume they were trying to communicate, that they painted more cityscapes than other Impressionist painters did. But since they didn't throw the did in there, then we just assume that they paint a lot of cityscapes, and maybe they occasionally paint their friends who are other Impressionist painters. I don't know. That's why it's important to be as clear as you can. Now we're going to focus on something that's not as fun, a bit more tedious, but it's just as important: parallel structure. What is parallel structure? Parallel structure means using the same patterns of words to show that two or more ideas have the same level of importance. This can happen at the word, phrase, or clause level. Sorry. Basically, this means if you guys know what parallel means, like the two lines that go exactly alike, things that it's like a mirror image of each other. Now, parallel structure is similar, like a mirror image of the structure, but obviously you're not going to repeat the same words. And if you wanted to be like symmetrical, you would have the words backwards, but we don't want that. We just want the structure to be symmetrical. So let's say you have noun, verb, adjective on the left. You're going to need to have noun, verb, adjective on the right. The usual way to join parallel structure is with the use of coordinating conjunctions such as and or. Sometimes you can have commas that separate them, but there's usually going to be an and or an or between the two. Sometimes semicolons, there's exceptions, but just look at any separation of the clauses or ideas or words. And those are usually what joins the parallel structure. Now, the best way to tackle parallel structures is do not mix forms. Example one, which is not parallel, Mary likes hiking, swimming, and to ride a bicycle. See, this is not parallel because it says Mary likes hiking, you've got the ing, you've got swimming, and then to ride a bicycle. Why did you switch it up at the very end? I don't know. Lists are a good indicator, by the way, that you're looking at parallel structure. If you see the commas of the list, like blah, blah, and blah, then it's going to be usually some kind of parallel structure they're attempting there. So it's good to make sure, once you notice that, try to make sure that it's the same form. So if you look at the parallel example now, Mary likes hiking, swimming, and riding a bicycle. Now you could make it even more parallel there by simply saying biking. Mary likes hiking, swimming, and biking. But just the fact that you have the ing there of that version of the verb, then it's still parallel. You could make it more parallel though. Example two, the production manager was asked to write his report quickly, accurately, and in a detailed manner. Now let's look at the parallel version of it. The production manager was asked to write his report quickly, accurately, and thoroughly. Now you see how those three all ended in the ly, blankly, quickly, accurately, thoroughly. Technically, a detailed manner is a good version of thoroughly, but if you've got a better way to throw like that same form in there, then you might as well. Now, what is a clause? I've thrown this word around a little bit. Parallel structure that begins with a clause must keep on with clauses. Changing to another pattern or changing the voice of the verb from active to passive or vice versa will break the parallelism. So basically, if you change like your verb form halfway through, then you're breaking the parallelism. And you don't want to break that parallelism because it looks nice and it's concise, and whenever you break it, it just makes things more confusing than they should be. You have to like if you're reading something and you see a broken parallelism, your brain automatically like stops and makes you try to piece together what that said, rather than continuing on effortlessly. And that's what we're trying to do here. Continue on effort. So here's a couple more examples. The coach told the players that they should get a lot of sleep, that they should not eat too much, and to do some warm-up exercises before this game. So if it was proper, as in the parallel example, then it would have that they should, and that they should will be there all three times. So the coach told the players that they should get a lot of sleep, that they should not eat too much, and that they should do warm-up exercises before the game. Or you could say the coach told the players that they should get a lot of sleep, not eat too much, and do some warm-up exercises before the game. So it doesn't really matter whether, let me rephrase that. It matters what you do on the first and the last of the sentences. So you could have the same thing three times, but if you want to break that and not have the same thing three times, such as the that they should, then you have to do it at least the first time and then not the second two times. So kind of like how these work, you could either say that they should all three times, that they should get a lot of sleep, that they should not eat too much, that they should do some warm-up exercises, or you can just use the that they should the one time and then the second two times you don't. But as long as you have at least two, as long as you only do it once, then that counts. But if you're going to do it twice, then you have to do it at least three times. Don't do anything twice, basically. Once or three times. Another example is the salesman expected that he would present his product at the meeting, that he would have a good time to show his side of the presentation, and that questions would be asked by prospective lawyers. Now, this is incorrect because they throw in the passive there at the end, that questions would be asked by the prospective buyer. To make it parallel, you get rid of that passive, basically. The salesman expected that he would present his product at the meeting, that he would have time to show his slide presentation, and that prospective buyers would ask him questions. Now that part is the part that changed, that prospective buyers would ask him questions. See, now you're getting rid of the passive. When you say that questions would be asked by prospective buyers, it's a little less clear. Passive tone is always less clear. Basically never use the passive unless you have to. In my linguistics class, we talked about how passive is often used when someone's talked about like a crime scene and they're trying to seem less guilty. So like instead of saying, yeah, I robbed that store, you could say that store was robbed, and that doesn't put you there specifically. It doesn't put a name on the robber. It just passively puts that the thing happened. And that's another. I don't know if you're noticing. There's a general theme here that you really just want to be as clear as possible, and that's another clerical issue. Now let's talk about subordination and coordination. Subordinating conjunctions are things such as although, because, before, despite, while. They require a comma if the dependent clause comes first. So I was hungry, comma, I ate dinner. That's incorrect, even though rappers tend to do this a lot now. Rappers are often not known for doing the right things grammatically. So I was hungry, I ate dinner. That sounds great and rhythmic, but it's not proper. The proper way would be I ate dinner because I was hungry, or because I was hungry, I ate dinner. See, these are two dependent clauses, basically two ideas that don't make sense without each other. So you can't separate them the way that the first one did. I was hungry, I ate dinner. Those are two different ideas, and you need to have them connected via the because. You can start with because, or you can put the because in the middle. You'll notice that with the because in the middle, you don't need the comma. You can just have it as I ate dinner because I was hungry, or because I was hungry, comma, identity. Now let's talk about coordinating conjunctions. I don't know if you guys remember fanboys, but we're going to bring back fanboys. You know, for, and, more, but, or, yet. So those are the 7 coordinating conjunctions. And they can link independent clauses. So basically, 2 ideas that don't necessarily have to go together. Fanboys and can link them, even though they don't have to go together. So bringing back the I was hungry, I ate dinner thing, to use one of the fanboys, you could throw so in there and say I was hungry, so I ate dinner. Now both I was hungry and I ate dinner are independent clauses. They're 2 separate ideas that don't have to go together, but the so does allow them to go together. Redundant conjunctions are if both a subordinating and a coordinating conjunction are used to link the same clauses, an error is created. For instance, since the lead actor is out sick, so the understudy will play the part. The since and the so are not necessary. You can do one or the other. You can say, since the lead actor is out sick, the understudy will play the part, or the lead actor is out sick, so the understudy will play the part. Many clauses could be logically linked with either coordination or subordination. However, you never want to use both. It's overkill and it sounds horrible. Comma splice errors occur when 2 independent clauses are joined by just a comma. So James struck a match, comma, light filled the dark room. Again, this sounds like something you might want to hear in a song, but it's not necessarily correct. Correct version is James struck a match and the light filled the dark room. Again, these are 2 conjunctions that are separated here, or 2 clauses, sorry, 2 clauses that are separated, 2 separate ideas, and you don't necessarily want them to be separated without the and, because the and clarifies how they're not separate. And that's all the time I have today. So hopefully this has been helpful, and hopefully you have a better idea of some things that you'll be seeing on the Praxis writing course. Thank you so much.